Hello and welcome to the Icelandic Perspective. We're here in front of Sky Lagoon. They invited us to check out the new place. It's basically the Blue Lagoon, just in the city of Kópavogur, which is a wonderful town.
It's just next to Reykjavik, basically.
It's next to
It's part of
Reykjavik.
Reykjavik. You don't even see it. It's a different town.
It's incredible.
Except the people, maybe.
And we're very thankful for this invitation because we want to show you how Icelanders discuss hot topics in Iceland.
Yes.
We go to the hot pots.
Yes.
And we speak about, we exchange heated opinions.
Yeah, this is a thing that Icelanders have been doing, in political discussions for the past, I would say 60 years.
60, hundreds of years.
Yeah, hundreds of years.
These hot pools were here when the Viking Grettisson.
Yeah, well, let's not go to the Vikings at this moment exactly. There's a lot of things we need to excuse for them. Yeah. But this has been a place where people actually can speak out about politics. And Icelanders actually speak a lot about politics in these locations. We have swimming pools all around the countryside, everywhere in Iceland.
Every district in Reykjavik, and every town in the countryside.
Everywhere. Everybody has a swimming pool, basically. Swimming pools for everybody, like Oprah would maybe say one day.
But you will have a swimming pool. You will have a swimming pool.
Exactly. That was just like Oprah came here and gave everybody a swimming pool. We have that many swimming pools. But we're going to go over here because we have a visit here in Iceland of the two foreign ministers of one of the two greatest powers in the world is the US, and then maybe the 8th or 9th greatest power, that's the Russia.
Iceland is now the meeting place for this new, would you say new Cold War between Russia and the US?
Yes,
and Iceland also as well.
Yeah, because Iceland has a really big part in history regarding the Cold War, because this is actually the meeting place of Gorbachev and Reagan.
Right.
For the famous Reykjavik meeting. Famous Reykjavik meeting for Icelanders, but not for many other people, but historians perhaps.
But before we go into the hot pots, we are going to meet a friend of ours there. His name is actually exactly the same as mine. It's Valur also, and his last name is Gunnarsson. And he also used to be an editor-in-chief at Reykjavik Grapevine. So they have a type, I guess, that magazine.
Well, the CEO basically just goes and picks up every Valur. So I think that's a great business plan.
But he actually wrote a book about the situation in Russia and Ukraine and in the peninsula of Crimea.
Crimea.
Yeah, Crimea. Right. So it's going to be very interesting.
And don't forget South Odessa. Near Georgia, basically.
Of course, nothing passed him actually. So we're going to go inside. See you there.
Bara einhvern veginn alveg að fagna. Ég ætla bara að fara
Ég veit það, ég veit það. Mjög
Mjög Þau eru inni, þú hérna. Þeir ætlastu bara að nota þessi armbönd. Þau eru lyklarnir að skápa. Og svo er hér og þar eru allir saman en í einhver klefa.
Já, ok.
Þannig að þú hefur aðgang að svona.
Ok. No, come here. Well, hello, Valur, and hello, Valur also.
Oh, yes.
It's going to be a little bit confusing, Valur and Valur.
Oh, this is my first handshake in
Do you
a
feel
year.
that?
Can
you feel that?
COVID is done.
It's okay here also.
Yeah.
In the pure Icelandic water here, it's clean and.
We kind of need to introduce this man here. We decided to have a specialist with us in this episode, and this is Valur Gunnarsson. And the reason we have him is because, of course, he wrote a very interesting book about the situation, not about the situation, perhaps like a poetic kind of thread through the very complicated situation in Russia, Ukraine, and the Crimea Peninsula.
It's
the Crimea,
a biographical history or something like that of my travels in Russia and the Ukraine and the former Soviet Union.
Exactly. And the thing is that, of course, you were also an editor-in-chief at Reykjavík Grapevine like years ago, and one of the co-founders of the magazine itself, right?
Yes, I find in general the best editors of Grapevine are called Valur.
I full-heartedly agree.
Sorry here, but I have to disagree here a little bit in this case. You know, it goes a little bit downward, but okay.
Well, there are exceptions.
Not all Valurs are the same.
That was my point, but we should
But
continue.
still, a Valur at all is usually better than anything else.
Yeah.
So, I want to start this discussion a little bit just because we have Sergei Lavrov in Iceland as well as Anthony Blinken, both
the
foreign
ministers
of US and Russia. But Sergei kind of like, he's of course now going to be the councilman of the Arctic Commission, or what would it be?
Arctic Council.
Arctic Council, yeah. And he kind of like jump-started yesterday in the Russian media where he said that the Arctic, well, the North Pole was more or less Russian, and everybody just knew that, and everybody was just trying to take that away.
There was no reason for debate.
And the thing is that it's like one of these microaggression behavior we're seeing so often when it comes to Russia. And like, how do you think a meeting can go between Sergei Lavrov and Blinken, like starting with this kind of discussion, like comments?
Well, first of all, I think that's something of a misunderstanding. I mean, yes, the Russians do things like they send out a submarine to put a Russian flag at the bottom of the Arctic.
Famously.
I've seen it coming up, also videos, they like to come up.
Years ago, but I think it's actually just misunderstood. He was just saying that they own their own coastline to the Arctic, which, goes without saying. And actually Mike Pompeo said a few months ago that, the former Secretary of State, that the Arctic belonged to the US.
Yeah, just because of Alaska, which originally was a Russian territory. In 1852, the United States bought that from the Russians.
1867, they sold it, and they probably regret that now.
But
Well, and then there was Sarah Palin, so...
a second regret, even more.
Yeah, I guess if Sarah Palin would have been Russian, what would the world look like?
it would be interesting. Let's just see that.
I would start praying a lot.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the things that set all this in motion is Trump's suggestion to buy Greenland.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, partly he's saying that America is very interested in this area.
Yeah.
It's also a claim to a much bigger area. It's, I think, 20% of the Arctic area is Greenland.
Yeah, right.
It's also saying to the Danes that, we are interested here. If you don't do anything, we will.
Yeah.
And Denmark just this year has decided to spend $240 million on defense in Greenland.
Wow.
Okay.
And
Why?
For Denmark, Denmark is not really known for a great military nation.
And you would think that Greenland, just the glacier itself and the coldness there, would kind of just scare away anyone.
Well, we have global warming, Valur, so
Yes.
it's actually getting a little bit better, as we have noticed here in Iceland. Summers are getting better and the winters
wonderful.
also, Thank you, global warming. Thank you, consumers.
It's nice for bathing in Iceland, but there are problems associated with global warming.
Let's keep that for another discussion.
But the thing is with the Russians, it's like but still, like when you have the situation, also for Icelanders, the communication between Russia and Iceland, for example, as well as the US, as well as the EU, UK, wherever you go into Europe, they are very cold right now. I mean, we haven't had such a bad relationship with Russia since 1980 something, right?
Probably not, because Russia has always referred to the US as a partner since the end of the Cold War, whatever else is going on. But just last week, they downgraded them to adversary, as well as the Czech Republic. So, yes, they are sending those signals, but we everything Russia does is always interpreted hostilely, and everything NATO does is just their own self-defense. But of course, Russia sees it the other way around. So if Denmark and the United States are building military bases in Greenland, the Russians are of course going to build military bases in Siberia. But nobody really wants this because it's very expensive. It's a literal Cold War. It serves no purpose. So the idea has been to demilitarize the Arctic and keep the Arctic Council sort of not involved in military affairs, so they're discussing other things. But this could change in a way that benefits really no one. But of course, this area is becoming more important because as the North Pole melts, then you can sail from Shanghai to Rotterdam in
And
in
this
a
would
much
be
shorter time, and you don't have to, go through the Suez Canal.
And
or
if that gets
the Middle
blocked
East.
up again,
Yeah.
then you have another way around.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a bad work day for that captain.
But we
But great advertising for the northwestern route.
It could be.
But we're talking about a route that would take like a ship going from Reykjavik to Shanghai 4 weeks. It would take what 2 weeks. So it would be. Or is it 4 weeks? It's more like 8 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's closer.
yeah,
But
8 weeks.
it's considerably shorter.
Yeah, right.
So that's one thing. The other thing is that when the glacier recedes, a lot of minerals
And resources,
resources are becoming more accessible, especially in Greenland.
But what is the part of Iceland in this? I mean, why? First of all, we of course had the chairman in this in this committee right now, and Russia is taking lead in this committee. But what is why is this not a concern for Icelanders?
Well, the Arctic Council is the countries that border the Arctic Circle. So that's the US because of Canada, because of Alaska, Canada because of Canada, Denmark because of Greenland, Iceland because of Grimsey actually. That's the only part of Iceland that border the Arctic Circle.
A wonderful island, by the way, where on the 21st of June, the sun actually, you can see it sit and come back up like a minute later.
Yeah.
It's the only brilliant thing about that island.
Highly recommend to travel there.
But yeah, there's a way to cross the Arctic Circle. Then it's Norway because of northern Norway and Svalbard, which is also very far north. Finland and Sweden, but they're not actually major players in this because they don't have access to the sea, but they're just above the Arctic Circle. And then of course Russia, which has by far the longest coastline. And
they are the biggest player regarding coastline rights, and most of the territory, the sea territory, if you take, then Russia is number one.
Yeah, it's a big part of Canada, but 4 million people live above the Arctic Circle, and half of them are in Russia.
Yeah.
By far the two biggest cities, Murmansk is one of them, and Norilsk are in Russia. So, but they don't.
Great
They
town.
Murmansk. Murmansk is beautiful on the inside.
Yeah.
So, I went there, and there was a presentation, and they showed the pictures of all the buildings, which were very grey, and they said, well, that actually looks better at night.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
you get to see everything.
one of those cities. Yeah.
So, Murmansk, that's I haven't been there, but I can't imagine that's like a city that have promises as a tourist city in the future. But it's quite famous, of course. I mean, you hear about it all the time in the villain, the bad villain in the American Cold War movies are always somehow connected to Murmansk.
Yeah, that's where the Northern Fleet was.
Right.
And that was actually the job of the Americans in Iceland in World War II, was essentially to stop the Northern Fleet getting anywhere in case of war. Because it's called the GF gap between Greenland, Iceland and UK.
Yeah.
So if you can close that gap, you completely dominate the Atlantic and you can stop anyone getting in there. So.
But tell me one more thing. I'm thinking about of course we have this odd dispute, not odd, it's a huge dispute, of course, about the Arctic area, the North Pole basically, and the global warming and the effect on that. And it's a huge thing in itself. But I'm more curious about you lived in Ukraine for a while, and you have this, of course, I mean, I think it's pretty safe to call it invasion from the Russians again and again into, if not a military invasion, then propaganda invasion or whatever, into Ukraine. I mean, how was it to be there, and how is this situation right now? It's again escalated.
It seemed to be. It's been sort of what's called a low-intensity conflict for a while.
Yeah.
So 2 or 3 men might get killed a month, but there are very few, attacks. Nobody's gaining ground or losing it.
Oh, yeah,
They're just sort of sitting there shooting at each other occasionally.
So the Russians have basically established the line they would find,
Yeah.
good.
You're satisfied with the line.
Yeah.
For now.
They are actually separatist regions in Donetsk, Luhansk. So they are Eastern Ukrainians who would rather belong to Russia, supported by the Russians indirectly and directly, it looks like as well.
A little bit directly. Little green man, as one says.
Yes, some of them. But Putin doesn't really care very much about Donbass. It's an aging industrial area and an age where everyone is abandoning coal. So he has no use for it. He will never give Crimea back because Crimea is important to Russia.
Well, it's a buffer zone.
right? And because of this, after the Second World War, the Russians wanted to create a buffer zone between them and the European, superpower.
But they would prefer that buffer zone to be Ukraine.
Yeah, the whole of Ukraine.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they've sort of blown that opportunity. But I
it's
think
also about gas, right? I mean,
I think no. Yes, gas lines do go through Ukraine, but they are seen as not very safe. So yes, it does help in a way because they're building Nord Stream 2, which is another gas line directly from Russia to Germany, which is much more important. Yeah. But I think Putin's one major goal is just to make sure that Ukraine will never join NATO. Because that will make Ukraine indefensible. If you have NATO bases in eastern Ukraine, they can be in Moscow very soon, and they're never going to allow that to happen, or the possibility.
But what do you think is going to happen? I mean, there is still a trading ban on Russia. I mean, Icelanders are participating in this trading ban against Russia because of their aggression against Ukraine. Do you think they will finish this microaggression, invasion, whatever you should call it? Or do you think they will just be aggressive on the side like always?
Well, they will never give back Crimea.
No.
So having a trade ban until they give back Crimea is just going to go on forever and ever. So I think everyone, even if Navalny became president of Russia tomorrow,
he would not
they would not give back Crimea. So I think we can forget about that. But I think they're actually quite happy to give back Donbass as long as Ukraine doesn't join NATO. But it still wants to join NATO, so it has to keep, as long as there's a war there, Ukraine cannot join NATO, according to NATO.
Oh. So there could be a solution in the Ukraine situation was to form a neutrality for the Ukraine, just like Switzerland.
Yes, and like Austria and like Finland. Yeah. And it actually worked quite well. None of these countries have wanted to join NATO even after the end of the Cold War when they could. Yeah. And this is what it should have been done to begin with, because as NATO expands eastwards, Russia just sees this huge army made up of some of the same nations that killed 28 million people in World War II coming closer, and they are going to get paranoid.
That's the thing that people. We also have this problem in Georgia, with Southeast Asia and everything, where Georgia was going to also join NATO. That was the first step, basically, where the Russians kicked back. And isn't it that we'll be seeing that the solution might just be to create neutral states around the borders of Russia?
Yes, that would be the sort of the logical solution, the realist solution. But NATO sees the world differently because that's going back to great power politics and to spheres of influence. And the NATO idea, sort of, if you as an independent country want to join NATO, you should be able to. And it's not up to Russia to say. But what did America do when Russians had military bases in Cuba? Great powers just have.
The clash.
Clash would be the correct word.
But
they will always like to keep their immediate surroundings.
But what do you think about, there is kind of like a new threat going on now? I mean, threat or not threat. The new big fight used to be, the old big fight was basically the war on terror. The one that we basically grew up with. It began in 2001, and it's kind of not yet over, and it was basically the Middle East all the time. But now it's like the US is again realizing that the real villain the whole time was always Russia, and the focus is going backward. And that's why I'm thinking about also this meeting, of course, that will happen in Iceland. It's is Iceland gaining its position again? It's like the Cold War strategic country, and also because if you think about it, the army base in American army base, they went away at 2005 or 6. 2006, 7, and we've been losing kind of gain in this, but now all of a sudden they're meeting here, and we're kind of on the map again, right?
Well, the slightly longest answer is that ever since World War II, Iceland became important for the first time because of longer range airplanes that could operate from here, submarines and so on. So the British invaded in 1940. The Americans came a year later when they were still neutral, partly to defend America, of course, but to enter close to Europe. And then they departed in 1945, but Iceland joined NATO in 1949. And then in 1951, the Americans came back. which was very disputed in Iceland. The left hated it.
Yeah, it was actually one of the largest protests in the history of the country when we joined NATO. The Icelandic police force used tear gas. We called in volunteers to beat on the leftists.
Yeah, and they took up, came from the streets and throughout the police. And it was up until the pots and pans revolution.
It's like NATO and then the financial collapse.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, at that point, it's definitely, the Cold War. It's everyone thought actually that the Korean War could become global, which is why it was very important for the Americans to have a base, and that continued until the end of the Cold War in 1991. They scaled back from 18 fighters to 4. They had been paying a lot of money to various, there was a monopoly set up with one company that could trade with them and they charged top dollar. So
very Icelandic.
Yes.
They benefit a lot. But
that's one way to do business in Iceland.
But by the 90s, there wasn't that much gain. So by that point, the Icelandic government actually wanted to keep those fighters here. Maybe because they thought they could still benefit financially. But then there was the first Gulf War and the War on Terror. And in 2006, Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, he decided to just pull the rest of the planes back and the helicopters. He was in war in Iraq, he could use them there, it had nothing to do with in Iceland. Actually, the State Department wanted to keep them here because Iceland had been part of the coalition of the willing. We had done our bit on the understanding that they would keep the planes and then
Note the banner here for people who know about the coalition of willing. We actually don't have a military. So that's good when we signed this, and we actually sent one soldier to Iraq, and that was actually in PR, a major.
And for those that do not remember this, the Coalition of the Willing was a lot of weird countries writing their names on a list said that they would support the US to invade Iraq.
Yeah, and there were only 2 ministers who actually did this in Iceland, and everybody woke up that we were actually supporting the invasion to England.
So Iceland have technically once started the war. And we won it.
Yeah, well, we did start the Cold War. Another show we can do on.
But actually, if you go back to the Grapevine Files, the summer of 2004, issue 6, we did a piece by Kristinn Hrafnsson, who was there in Kabul, about the Icelandic Army, which were essentially armed firemen. The firemen, they got military training in Norway, they were sent there, and they were policing the airport.
So people will get this. They were armed firemen. So just I wanted people to know this. We took firemen from the fire station who do transportation of sick people from the hospital and everything, and we military trained them and sent them to a military comfort zone. Just wanted to make sure that people will understand.
Yeah, I don't know if you can blame the Norwegian military training, but then while there they went shopping for carpets.
Yes, the famous Chicken Street incident. Yes.
Where they were blown up. Thankfully none of them died. I think one of them lost a testicle. The testicle was actually, I think, the sum of Icelandic military casualties.
Did you say testicle?
Yes.
Testicle.
One testicle is the military loss of Icelanders in these terror on war.
Yeah, almost his point.
Anyway, let's keep on track. Okay.
Well, it didn't. That doesn't stop news reporters actually. So.
Not my day.
Oh no. Oh. Yeah, I'll be back. Very cold. Yeah, I'll be back.
So you used to live in South Korea?
No, I studied there in South Korea, and actually, this is a tradition there at least, and in many other countries, where you put salt on your body to rub it, and actually takes off all the extra dead skin off you. And in South Korea, where I was in my neighborhood where the school was, we joined the local sauna, and there is the tradition that the newest members must put salt on the back of the oldest member. So we were 3 white, we're talking about like 3 see-through white Icelanders putting salt on this older gentleman, appeared to be in his 90s, to welcome us. It's like a welcome ceremony.
It sounds very long.
And I had never heard so many Koreans laugh at the same time.
Oh, you were tricked.
No. We thought that. We thought somebody was messing with us. We thought that, but this was actually a tradition in this local sauna. But back to Russia.
Russia, yes.
From Korea. But we could talk about the Korean War, but there's a different show.
I want to end this by speaking a little bit about the situation in Iceland. How the communication between Iceland and Russia has been for the last decade at least. I mean, it was very famous in 2008 when our banking system completely failed and just crashed. That Russia was the first one that they offered us a very hefty loan.
Yes.
Like no strings attached.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But a lot of politicians said like, well, there is nothing they called a gift from Russia called no strings attached.
No, there's no free lunch.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we did not go for that, although it would have happened. And later on, we had a very controversial, of course, discussion when we did the trading ban.
Mm-hmm.
And it affected our fishery, fish markets, which was also quite bad for Iceland. So
we lost a lot of money. We lost a huge market space.
Huge amount of money. Yeah.
Yeah, not very often Iceland makes policy decisions that lose money.
No.
Because if you look at the Cold War, Iceland was actually the country in NATO that traded most of Russia. Forget that. We always sort of tried to take them in the stand. And if the Russians bought fish, then the Americans would have to buy fish to something more, so we could always spend both sides.
Yeah.
And I think with that Russia loan, which I think was more or less negotiated by David Oddsson, who was a former prime minister, was
That was in 2004.
Yeah.
And that was sort of Cold War tactics, because the Americans weren't helping at all. We always thought or they thought, that they could rely on the Americans to bail us out because we were so important. But now the army was gone. The Cold War was over. The war on terror wasn't important to anyone. So they thought maybe by turning to the Russians, then America would come in again. Which didn't work so well then. It might probably work better now, because now we are back in another form of Cold War. And actually another thing happened in 2006. Not just the American army leave, and it's now policed by NATO, but China also built the biggest embassy in Iceland.
Yes.
Which is actually much too big for its needs.
I had no idea what they would need for this building, and the employees are also humongous. And I actually did a story about this, that I asked the foreign ministry in Iceland how many Chinese staff is registered at the embassy, and they didn't know. We have no idea how many work there.
Yeah, so China's continuing interest. There was also this guy Nubo, who was a private millionaire who wanted to buy a lot of land in the middle of nowhere to build a hotel, which seems strange to everyone, but actually a hotel in the middle of nowhere in Iceland might be a good idea.
Makes sense now, because this was not dependent. This was before the tourist boom we had, and he would actually have hit the target market for that. He was thinking about that before.
Yeah.
But we banned him, of course, not to buy him.
Do you think, for example, that Iceland and Russia would have any more positive communication and connections? Or, I mean, it seems like our new foreign minister, Grettisson, he has quite a clear tone in his voice when he talks about Russia, and he takes clear decisions, it seems, in most issues.
Yeah, I think Iceland and Russia have a lot in common. I think Iceland and Russia often get along. And we always had a sort of friendliest relationship in the Cold War. So this is an example of Iceland just taking a stand with other democratic or
Western
nations.
Naturally so. I mean, this is where we belong.
Very, very clearly. But if it's about Crimea, it will go on forever. But at some point, people will decide. I think that there's not going to back up Crimea, and with China on the rise, Russia is, is going to be caught in some ways, both by the US and China, so it would be brought back. So, there's the question of the fisheries, because Iceland did sell a lot of fish to Russia and always has, and that market was lost, and then it was taken over by the Faroe Islands. We're quite happy.
They were really lucky, those bastards, with that. They thought,
because even though they're part of the
Denmark.
Kingdom of Denmark, they decided not to join the European Union and outside Denmark, so they've been able to navigate their own policy. In this case, they benefited financially. Sorry, you were going to say?
I mean, the meeting, of course, is right now, and we're going to show this show a little bit later. So the meeting will obviously be done between Blinken and Lavrov. But perhaps interest yourself to guess, what do you think is going to come out of this meeting between them? Do you think that the situation will be exactly the same, worse or better? Or will the Russians officially own the Arctic area?
They will just sign off.
I think Blinken will have to have had way too much brainwave to sign up on the
Well, we can fix that. We can fix that in either way, for Lavrov or Blinken, we have plenty of that.
Yeah. They're asking to make predictions of something that will have taken place by the time this comes out, but I think we're almost at the point where things can only get better, and I think that it's very positive that they are talking, and it's a good place to do it. Yeah. The important thing here is not the Arctic, the important thing is the dialogue between the US and Russia about other matters,
yeah.
such as Ukraine. And they, and just that they are starting to talk, and they can do that informally here, and that will hopefully lead to a summit meeting between Biden and Putin, which we only hope will be here as well.
Yeah, right.
And you know, just the fact that they are talking again, I think is very important because Biden has had a very, very adversarial relationship with Putin, and he seems to see him as a personal enemy. So, but there are, you know, there are no fundamental issues at stake. I think, you know, they can be solved. There's just a lot of mutual fear, as there always has been. Sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly, but you know, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
That's true, like Roosevelt said.
Yeah,
good ending.
Ultimately destroy us.
Kannski rúsina að fara að byggja þetta.
Já.
Mælum við höndum því í Lavró, hendum hugmyndin að byggja svona í
Príska.
Já.
Tennum ferðamenn, diggur ekki nú við hér.
Nei, sko, það er náttúrulega eitt sem við glemdum alveg að fara yfir, var náttúrulega Gorbachev. Nei, fyrir ekki Khrushchev, gaf Úkraínu raun og veru svæðið.
Jú.
Þannig að það gleymist pínu, sko, að þetta var í raun og veru ekki partur af Úkraínu, en það gleymist líka að Rússarnir skrifuðu undir samning 91, þar sem að...
Það ensku?
Já, ok, við erum ennþá að tala um, við erum verið að gera það? You know, this was supposed to be the, how we say to people that the show is going to end.
Yeah.
I actually just want to do another circle here around and another round here.
Yeah, if the bar is open, we can just start at the Viking Age and then just continue going.
Yeah,
Exactly. We finally found the bar actually.
Yes,
And
it's hidden that in that small cave over there.
And I have to say, we were invited here like by the owners of Sky Lagoon, and they are absolutely wonderful to help us with this.
Yes.
Come to me, Valur.
Yeah.
Like this. So, we were invited here by the staff and owners of Sky Lagoon, and they wanted to show like the Icelanders and the media and all this place. So I told them the idea, like, yes, we're going to talk about like very complicated Russian politics while we're going into Lagoon. But this kind of like exceeded all my expectations.
I did not expect this, and as an Icelander, it's just...
It's breathtaking.
Yes, it's beautiful how they mix the nature with the pool.
Yeah, right.
And I you know, I didn't even think about this could be done, you know what I mean? You know, as a regular guest in the pools of the capital area, I mean, but...
And this is literally in the middle of the capital area.
Yes,
it's
easy access, quick from anywhere in the capital area, and I know it started to sound like an advertisement, but it actually is not.
We are just mesmerized.
We normally don't talk about these places that we go to, but we just had to talk specially about this one because I think this has far been the best place we will ever go. But in the future we will go to even, you know, this not better places, but similar good.
Well, we are always trying to like torture each other.
Yeah.
So we decided to not to do that today.
Yeah, Valur needed a little bit of relaxation. Lost 2 times already, and you know he needed a.
I lost 2 times.
2 times. You already lost 2 times. So if you do a swimming competition now, let's do that.
Yeah, we can always do that.
Yeah.
But Valur, thanks for coming with us into the Sky Lagoon and speak about this incredibly light subject of I mean, I know it's a pop issue, these Russian politics, and I mean...
And it's a large issue, and even larger than this show can
never
ever go over.
Either this or what's happening with Taylor Swift, I don't know, it's like...
Yeah, no, thank you.
Well, it all started in 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the year Taylor Swift was born and her album in 1989. So
finally,
it all comes together.
There is a connection. Well, we will go through that connection next time. No, we won't. But please like and subscribe on our channel to see the next show we will be doing next week. Until then, cheers or skål.
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 Should we go for it?